Thank you, Halsey. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining today's episode. We are here today with very special guest, Halsey Minor. Maybe for those who are not familiar, he's the visionary behind some of the greatest successes in enterprise computing, like a CNET, Uphold, Salesforce, or the Google Voice. Today, he leads Live Planet and VideoCoin Network, about which we are going to talk today. So, Halsey, thank you for joining me here.
Hey, glad to be here.
So, can you give us a brief introduction to the VideoCoin Network and how it works, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a business service that most people don't kind of interact with, except every video that you watch pretty much has to go someplace like Amazon, and then the video has to get processed, and it gets processed differently for different devices. So you get a different video stream if you're watching an iPhone versus an iPad versus an Android phone. So there's a lot of this processing that has to go on, and it's very time consuming. It's resource intensive, and when you've got 80% of all data on the internet being video, it's an enormous business. So what Amazon Web Services and Google do that we are competing with is to take this video in to it's called encoding, but to properly format it for all the various devices around the world, and then to be able to send that out and serve the content up as close to the person as possible. People call it a CDN, a content. These content networks are designed to make the videos as close to the person who's downloading them, so everybody doesn't have to go across the internet to get a video. So it's a very efficient way. The internet would absolutely crumble if we didn't have these ways of pushing video out closer to the edge. So the blockchain is a really great technology for being able to do distributed things like that. But the most important thing that we do is we take advantage of a vast amount of computers that sit in data centers that aren't being used at all, and they can fulfill the exact same roles that Amazon Web Services provides. Netflix, for instance, runs on Amazon Web Services. But we can do it at a fraction of the cost because we're using data centers that are just sitting idle. So anything they get is better than the nothing that they're getting.
So when we are talking about that, how does using this tokenized fiat currency, help reduce the volatility normally associated with the token project?
Yeah. So we it's now public. So we are doing something that is very different from just about every crypto project today, and I think you're going to see a dramatic change. So, what we found out in 2018 and 2019 was stable coins were needed for trading, and they exploded, right? So here, the most effective, the largest use case for crypto today is moving dollars in stable coins. Okay, so the problem is that all of these services like ours and who do other things, they all require their customers to open an exchange account, to buy money at an exchange, to transfer that money over. That money is going up and down in value. And if you had to go to an exchange to buy money to use Amazon, nobody would use Amazon. It's too complicated, right? So we're the first project that allows you to use a credit card or just your bank account, just like you would use when you're using Amazon Web Services or even Amazon. So 99 point something of the world doesn't use crypto payments. They use their credit card. So we're the first people who have sort of recognized that to get outside of crypto, to get people who are outside of the industry, we need to make it easy for them to use the payment solutions they use for everything else. And so that means that you can pay in dollars to use our service. The data centers who participate, who have the computers, they get dollars. and our tokens is used for staking, and which I think is the best use for tokens, and I think that's what's really going to emerge in 2020.
Okay, when we're talking about, because it's very important here, is an underutilized computing resources, right?
Yes.
In the way how it works. So realistically, how much capacity exists in the terms of underutilized computing resources globally?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, and honestly, I generally haven't been asked that before, which is a really sort of straightforward question. One would say, well, actually, how much of this stuff is out there, and when we started out, we used research that said that 30% of computers and data centers were zombies. They weren't used at all. And so that was really the driving impetus for us to do this. Now that we're talking to companies about actually contributing their data centers, we see that the amount is enormous. And the reason that is true is because people are still switching to the cloud in huge waves, right? And I thought everybody moved to the cloud. No. There are so many companies, and once that happens, the second they move to the cloud, their whole data center is basically sitting there idle, and they don't know what to do with it. And this is happening everywhere. And what's interesting is we've gone in to talk to media companies about using our services, and some of the largest media companies in the world say, hey, yeah, we've got a whole data center that's not being used either, right? So it was our initial approach was based on research, but we can now say, I mean, there are companies, if I told you how much extra capacity that they had, I mean, you'd be shocked based on who they are, but it is very real that there's a lot of computing sitting out there doing nothing that could very well be contributing to our network and other kinds of applications like ours.
Okay, so we are covered. That's important.
Yeah. So it is absolutely real, not just based on not just based on the research that's out there. You can type zombie computers, and my guess is you'll get the same research we got. But in talking to companies, it's absolutely real. There's a ton of underused computers and companies all around the world.
Mm-hmm. So my question is, how much do you see these technologies like a 5G, VR, and AR increasing demand for the video storage and distribution capacity, right? Because as we know, this is a huge issue because the current providers can't really offer affordable solutions. So, what do you think? How much do you see the technologies increasing the demand?
So I mean, it's another interesting question, because what you have to recognize with 5G is it's going to do the exact opposite of what 4G did, right? So what 4G did by providing more bandwidth for people from 3G, it allowed all these applications like Facebook and Instagram, and 10,000 other, large services that are all basically centralized, right? But they can serve up, they can serve up high bandwidth experiences. YouTube, great example, right? Decentralized service, lots of video. And 5G, on the other hand, is completely different. 5G has two components. One component is speed. The other component is low latency. Low latency can only be driven by pushing the applications closer to the individual. So for instance, when Google and Microsoft start talking about, gaming consoles where you don't use the console, you just, use your keyboard or a device, and the console lives in the cloud. What they're talking about is being able to push those applications, those games, close to the edge so you get low latency, and the things like your devices actually migrate into the cloud because you have this very low latency sort of connection. So because 5G is not just faster bandwidth, it's a whole new architecture of computing that is decentralized. It is perfect in terms of as architecture, it's perfect for what the blockchain does best, which is decentralization of resources. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's the macro trend that's even better than just the basic kind of ideas of underutilized resources.
Yeah, talking about the disruptive technologies, there's always some initial hesitation with them, right? You're a firm believer in the power of the blockchain tech as game-changing disruptor, what I share. But so what would you say to those people and the businesses still suspicious about the blockchain, decentralization, and tokenization? Because for us immersed in the industry, it's easy to forget that many people, amongst the public, they have still little knowledge about the whole blockchain and decentralization. So what would you say to those who are still suspicious?
Look, I'm old. I'm old enough to have in the 1990s created a Nasdaq 100 company. If you live in the United States, that's the top 100 Nasdaq companies like Intel and Microsoft and Home Depot and Starbucks and on and on. And the company that I started made $1.5 billion in the latter part of the 90s, and we became one of those companies. There were only two internet companies that were in the Nasdaq 100. It was us and Yahoo at the time. That was a huge company. Most companies those internet companies between 2000 and 2002 all died. And it's interesting. They all died because they didn't get the ideas right. And some of them even died because their ideas were too early. But between 2000 and 2002, you had like 95% of all internet companies just perished, right? And so when you start out with these things like blockchain or even the internet, it's really hard to figure out how exactly they're meant to be used. So for CNET, every magazine publisher saw the internet as a magazine, and every newspaper saw it as a newspaper, and we saw it as a new publishing, medium, and that's why they went on and became very successful. And most of these magazines and newspapers, just basically died, in the United States. So getting the whole thing right, like what does it do better, and how do we the most important thing that I think we're going to contribute to the discussion about the industry is this need to accept fiat payments. You cannot expect your customers to open an exchange account to buy money to use your service. Like that works for the 0.01% of the crypto world. But if we're going to move these services from this very narrow little world of traders and whatever, and we're going to go out into the broader world where people use credit cards, we're going to need to figure out how we can integrate simplicity of payment with the blockchain. These two things need to be brought together, right? And so we're leading the way in May when we launch. We're the first to allow people to use your. And a lot of people, there's some people who are upset about this because they're like, well, okay, if my token isn't used for payment, what good's my token? Now it isn't valuable anymore. And to them, I would say it was never valuable for payments because it's too difficult to use for payments. But there are staking mechanisms that are really important, and the token can play important roles in staking and actually get compensated for actually doing that. So we expect the tokens that are used for staking to generate a reasonable amount of fiat cash for the various services they provide, for basically making sure that the best data centers rise to the top. There are a bunch of things that they do, but the industry is going to have to come to a realization that like we got to play with the global payments business if we're really going to try to take market share from companies like Amazon Web Services.
So shift the focus a little bit, right? My another question is, congratulations to your recent partnership with InDemand, right?
Yes.
So can you tell us a bit more about that, and also about your new innovators program, and about you reached recently the Kilimanjaro stage. Maybe you can explain to people. It's very interesting, this fourth stage road to Everest,
Right.
and it's kind of monumental because you reached already the first step three months ago. So can you tell us a bit more, because actually it shows very well the certain goals you have within the video code, right?
Yeah. So let me start with the innovators program. So first of all, the innovators program is not just for big media companies like InDemand. InDemand is actually a really large. They're owned by the largest cable operators, and just about every uh, on-demand, you know, boxing, MMA, concerts, like everything in the United States where you have a pay-per-view event, which are a lot. They basically do, and they've got just vast amounts of video that they're creating and they're storing. What you really need in order to be successful is you need a use case. In other words, you need a customer to say, you need to do this and you need to do this. This is less important. You can give me that next year, but you need a roadmap that aligns with how they run and operate their business. And so, everything I've done in my life, I mean, when I started Google Voice, because I was spending half my time in LA, half my time in San Francisco. Mobile phones were just kind of, I had a mobile phone, I had a car phone, I had a house phone, I had a business phone, somebody could reach me. So I said, why don't I create a service that just rings me wherever I am, right? And I know that's a problem a lot of other people. That's a use case, right? Understanding that allows you to build a product that people need. So the most important thing you can do is you can find companies who are willing to take the time and energy to help you understand how to solve their problems. Because it's never just simple. You don't just make something and throw it out there. Companies have very specific ways of being able. So InDemand is a great opportunity for us to understand how big media would want to use our services, right? And I mean, there's special things like watermarking video, right? Now, watermarking video doesn't matter if you're in the home security business, right? There's a huge amount of video right now that's being generated. It's exploding where people are clicking doorbells and video comes on, or walking by and video comes on, or cities are putting cameras everywhere. And all this video needs to get sent up to the cloud and then processed, stored, and sent back out. This is a huge use case that really in the last I would say 5 years has taken off. People have to realize outside of media there are really big opportunities. And so the program is really designed to find the leaders in these various different categories to work with us very closely so that we can solve the problem that they have, legitimately solve the problems that they have, and do so at a dramatically lower cost. And you think that would be easy to get. Every big company would want to find a way to do it. It turns out it's actually pretty hard. But InDemand has been, is fantastic for us because we're getting all of the information we need to integrate into their workflow, and that's very similar to what a lot of other big media companies do. So it's less about like getting more big media companies. It's more about getting other kinds of use cases. Like, for instance, this home security thing is one that we would love to have a partner with because so much video is being created. And more than that, that video is also getting smarter and smarter. So it can now tell the difference between a squirrel and a robber, right? And so that kind of video processing is also stuff that we can do using these data centers.
Well, talking about the video, how is I'm curious to know, how is the Life Planet's virtual reality system being received so far? And maybe we can talk a little bit about what is so innovative about it.
Yeah, I mean, we built an end-to-end system that has a camera, it has a cloud, and it has the ability to push video to all of the major platforms. We've greatly simplified the process of producing video. I would say, though, that the problem that the VR market has had is actually the low quality of the headsets that people have built.
Okay.
Um, you know, Facebook's kind of been the industry leader, and they're not a hardware company, and they haven't done a very good job of building hardware. We actually have seen other companies who are building products. I think the first one will be announced in at CES.
Okay.
It is like a game changer. I mean, it's amazing. And not only what's interesting is it's the processing doesn't happen here. You have a wire that goes down to like a little puck, and so it looks like glasses. I mean, it's like really small, but it's really high resolution. So you're you know even if you're just watching, forget about VR. Even if you're just watching videos, instead of putting your iPad in front of you, you put these things on and you get like a gigantic screen at very high resolution. So it may be that this stuff starts to happen in ways that people didn't originally anticipate, because the technology ends up uh, ends up allowing other use cases to emerge than the ones that everybody sort of foretold at the beginning. There is no doubt now in this particular case, it solves a problem that video has, which is when you put it on, you can't see. So they have cameras, and then those cameras, you can actually do AR, right? So it does VR and AR.
Yeah.
And that's always the way it should have been. That's the way Apple's talking about it today. And there's no doubt in the next, few years, Apple's phones have a cord, connect to a pair of glasses, have all your content on it, and instead of looking at the people who you're on your airplane ride with, you'll be able to put these on, tune out, and if somebody needs your attention, pass through and everything. So we're getting there. We just didn't get there at the same speed that everybody hoped. But it's a legitimate technology, and it will have its place when the real hardware companies step in. And you're hearing a lot more about this now from Apple. That we're going to do an AR goggles this year. So people, I mean, I've seen some of these technologies, and they're getting really good. But they're not going to come from Facebook. They're going to come from Japanese manufacturers of Apple, obviously, probably like Google, but also Japanese makers of consumer electronics.
Yeah. I mean, it's so exciting, right? I mean, I can't actually wait. I can't wait.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I gotta tell you, when you watch a movie with these glasses that are so, not the big thing on your face, it's so much better, because these things they're OLED screens. They have high dynamic range, which you don't have on your phone. It is way better than watching, even if you have a big screen TV in your living room, it's way better than that. And I think when people start seeing this, they're going to start seeing that all the other benefits that the technology actually has. So I think we're really late 2020 when we start to see that kind of, when we start seeing some of these guys. We'll start seeing people writing about it after CES. But I think 2021, we'll start seeing the devices that everybody wanted 5 years ago.
Cool. Well, back to your the company structure. You shared with the media that you put together, pretty incredible team in the Life Planet and the VideoCoin, including like industry pioneers, like your chief technology officer, Hannah Bassi, right? So I'm curious to know, was it hard to convince people, or did the concept sell itself?
I think if people think that you can legitimately innovate, it's the thing that people want to do most in their life. Like, I'm not saying everybody, but I'm saying there's a whole group of people out there who, if they're given a choice between doing something really cool and new and innovative, and they think you have a reasonable chance of succeeding, you're able to, to hire really good people. It's basically been, I think, what I've done best throughout my entire career, from CNET to, being the second, investing in Salesforce. And I mean, I was the second largest shareholder for the first 6 years. I owned 10% of Salesforce, and Mark owned 30% of it. And I spent 4.5 years helping to build it. And it was obviously an incredibly exciting technology. So we've done really well, finding people like Hondo Basse from 20th Century Fox. It was the CTO of 20th Century Fox to help us in the industry, and then Devidu Dagat, who's our CTO. He built a video streaming cloud at Intel, which competed against Amazon, competed against Google. They didn't want to compete against their competitors. They sold it to Facebook, and that's how Facebook got into video. So when we say we're building this new cloud for video, Dev has already done it once before. We just didn't do it in a decentralized way, and that's the the special sauce we all have to figure out, right? Is how do we find these data centers? How do we convince them to do it, and then how do we compensate them for the work in a way that makes them willing to contribute? And security is a big part of that too. We have to convince them that what we're doing is not going to have a negative effect on their data center. So there are a whole bunch of things that have to happen, and that's why you need somebody like InDemand to really just kind of like, what is your security, and to be able to convince them that it's significant enough to warrant, they're turning over their unused capacity.
Mm-hmm. Well, my last question, because I can imagine your schedule is very tight. So my very last question is, you've seen the tech ways, and my question is, what is your biggest hope for this technology, and even like a video card?
I think that, when things all, there were a whole bunch of things that came together to start the internet. First of all, it was the idea of the internet. Mm-hmm. Second of all, it was the beginning of very low-cost home computers that were also powerful. And there were a bunch of things that happened around networking, like Ethernet and other things that enabled any network to be connected to every network. The internet wasn't a technology. It was a whole bunch of technologies that all arrived at the same time. And as a result, created this crazy new dimension that we all spend our lives in. And I think that the same is going to happen with blockchain, but I think blockchain has come with more beliefs that are outside of business beliefs. They're like social beliefs, And I think on one hand, that's good. It's good to have a view for a new kind of world, and to see the technology as being a way to make that happen. But you also have to be very practical about how people, operate. Like, the fact that for all these services out there, you can't use a credit card to pay for them. It just, you got to move past we don't like the fiat and the banks and the whole thing. And I don't like banks. I don't mind fiat. I think the currency belongs to the people. I think the banks are pernicious. But it can't be an all or nothing, right? I mean, you have to integrate yourself into the larger world. You can't just, as crypto has done, stand alone and say, we don't need banks. We don't need all this stuff. We don't need, I mean, the reality is everything that's revolutionary, it doesn't just flip on revolutionary. it adds up to revolutionary, right? One step at a time. And so I think the industry, hopefully in 2020, will start taking the incremental steps that it needs in order to get out of this little box that it's in, to make the industry not about trading, but make the industry about building businesses. And that's, I want the death of FOMO. Because if FOMO, we get all the time, ideas for FOMO, right? But I think that what should happen, needs to happen, is that people start evaluating these things like businesses, like any investment that you would make, and really the money should flow to those that really have a genuine chance of actually doing something, and away from concepts that are broad in their expansive in their point of view, but really utterly incapable of delivering on a service that people are going to want to buy and buy easily, right? So I think there's gonna be some hard knocks that are going to happen from lack of adoption, and those are going to end up leading to things that will actually make the whole domain better. I would say one thing, having kind of lived through this whole internet thing, the single most effective thing that happened for the internet really happened around 2000, and that was Google. And the reason is because Google, for the first time, made it easy to find services that you were looking for, and that transformed everything. When I left CNET in 2000, people had 5 services. Bookmark, that's it. You have 5 services. And then all of a sudden you have you have an idea. Well, somebody make this. Boom, Google flips it up, right? And that one thing that people don't necessarily realize allows for all these new services. And then of course we had the iPhone and apps and all these things that kind of came together. And so part of that is going to be, I think, 5G, which needs to come out. It's going to take a little while. But for crypto, we need to really seriously think about how do we make it easy for customers to use these services and make it all economic, right? And not so emotional, I think, in terms of the selling point of what we're building.
Yeah, I mean, spot on, because I'm, after many, the crypto conferences, I'm coming to the realization that the most important is actually really educate people about the day-to-day use of the blockchain technology. And I'm sick and tired just about the cryptos and tokens and just about the trading. Actually, it's creating more damage than the good. Because once the people listen only about the trading and the Bitcoin and prices up and down, people don't really realize what is the blockchain about, right?
Well, I mean, look, this is to be honest, I had a very frustrating experience with the FOMO of the early internet. When there were companies, we had our maximum when I was there was $500 million a year in revenue. And we had companies that had $4 million in revenue who had higher valuations than my $500 million company. And because we made money, we traded on earnings, right? And all these other companies that had nothing, they could promise the world. And so they would get these really high valuations. And so there was a list that this woman, Mary Meeker, had, and it was the top 100 internet companies. And she rated them by market cap and by earnings. We were number 4 in earnings, and we were number 72 in valuation. Okay, and so this is kind of what we try to we have to sort of fight today. Is there are a lot of things you can do that are complete FOMO. They're not really additive to your business, but you kind of got to play the game, and at the same time you kind of got to build something real because the music will stop and there are a lot of chairs there, and you want to be one of the ones that has a chair.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Halsey, for taking your time and sharing with us, your insight and vision. And it was really a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. It's good. It's good seeing
And
you.
I hope that you're gonna have a very lovely day. And
Yeah.
I really hope you can share a little bit this weather with us.
Well, have a happy New Year.
Yeah, you too, you. A Merry Christmas, right?
Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Bye, Halsey. Thank you so
Bye
much.
bye.
Bye bye.